Hey guys, it's Colt here with another Last Epoch video. I know we're getting close to Path of Exile's new League launch, so I'm excited to start making content for that pretty soon. But in the meantime, I wanted to show you a great way to level up any of your Rogue masteries in Last Epoch. For anyone that's new to Last Epoch, Rogue is really the king of leveling. In particular, the Blade Dancer is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, leveling masteries in the entire game. I've leveled most masteries even on hardcore, and I would agree that Blade Dancer is the fastest, smoothest leveling experience I've had, especially if you aren't leveraging twink gear, meaning uniques that might be harder to get later on in the game that you'll pass down from your main character, or have a big crafting bank to put on some of the more powerful affixes early in the game. Rogue can be really strong as a season starter, regardless of which mastery you want to play in game. For me, it was the first character I leveled on hardcore, and I've sort of left my rogue there without trying to push too much corruption on it because I know it's always a very viable speed farming class. I can hop on and farm gear anytime I need it for my account. And one of the great things about my approach to leveling rogue is that regardless of which mastery you want to play in the rogue class, you can still utilize the full Blade Dancer toolkit and level really, really quickly. Even if you're marksman, even if you're falconer, you're going to have access to all the skills and passives needed to really zoom through the campaign, even into those early monoliths, and start farming up some gear for your in-game build. And one of the things I'll highlight that I'm going to show you is this method isn't dependent on RNG. You don't have to worry about getting any unique drops that make your character more powerful. You don't have to worry about rare affixes that might be hard to find. This is very easy to just plug and play. Fresh character, even if you're playing solo character found, you can get this done in about 2 hours, even on a brand new toon, brand new account. Obviously, your mileage may vary if you're going to spend a little more time in the campaign, if you're not as experienced with the leveling routes. I would actually recommend you check out my first video on more of a general deep dive into leveling tips. But I wanted to make something particular to the rogue because I feel it's a very, very strong class for a season starter, and it's one I've been having a ton of fun on so far. So I'll put relevant links to anything we talk about in the description down below. And I'll also have some clips of my full 1 to about level 45 leveling journey. So you can speed that up and kind of watch any relevant parts that you might find interesting. I'll include that on the end of the video. But for now, let's dive right in. So the first thing you're going to do is open up the vendor here. And I would actually recommend picking up pretty much anything that drops in those first few areas. That's going to give you a nice little basic gold, so you can actually buy a few things from this vendor when you get here. If not, you might run into some issues where you don't have enough gold. No big deal. You can see even the most expensive things. This costs 25 gold. This costs 38 gold. Even the most expensive things are going to be pretty cheap. So as long as you're looting pretty much everything here in the first little bit, you'll be able to buy yourself a nice foundation for these items before you actually start generating some loot from enemy kills. So the first thing you're looking for here is a big two-handed weapon. This can be a bow. I personally prefer the Bastard Sword base, as it gives you a lot of melee damage. It's really strong early game. And ideally, this is going to have Ignite chance or Bleed chance on it. You can see this has increased damage over time, which is really strong. It's actually more rare to get the increased damage over time than Bleed chance or Ignite. So maybe if I get a Rune of Shattering drop and I get something with Ignite on it or something with Bleed on it, I can actually throw those affixes on this sword. So this is what I would recommend buying to start. Give yourself a big two-handed weapon. And then really you're just kind of going to fill out any gear slots you have here. Always want to grab silver rings if you can. Those are really strong because of the movement speed. But the most important thing here, silver rings and weapon from this first vendor. Prioritizing damage over time for the weapon. Let's talk about the loot filter. So when you're going through the campaign, really all you care about, physical resistance, health, and some void resistance, but that's definitely third. You can go through the entire campaign all the way up into monoliths without actually looting really any items outside of getting that initial base of health and physical resistance. And you're going to feel really strong. You're going to feel nice and tanky through the campaign. and you'll be able to go participate in early monoliths without much of an issue. I would recommend getting physical resist capped. It's actually really easy to do that, and then you can start working on your other resistances once you get into the monolith system. But let's just start from scratch here with the loot filter, and I'll show you how to make one super quickly. We'll call this Cold Fresh Rogue. And I'm just going to look at a few things. The first thing I'm going to do is actually put in a hide clause here by rarity. And this is just going to pretty much hide any of these normal, magic, or rare items. Now it's going to be important that this is always at the bottom of my loot filter. Loot filters work from top to bottom, and I want everything hidden at all times. Now I'm going to selectively choose what I want the loot filter to show. After it's read through the things I've told it to show, everything else is getting hidden. That's sort of the logic how this is going to work. So the first thing we'll want will be affix. And again, I just mentioned these. Physical resistance, void resistance, and health. I would check all three of these healths. You're not going to get Ox until later in the campaign, and you're not going to get hybrid until monoliths probably, but you'll get these plus health. The difference in of life and of the Ox is this is plus health, a nominal value, meaning it might add 10 health points. This is plus health as a percentage, so it might add 3% health. So early in the campaign, of life is a little better because you're building up that initial health pool. And once you've sort of built up a nice base, percentage then becomes better with ultimately a combination of a nominal increase plus a percentage increase in hybrid is actually the best late game. So long story short, check all three of those and you can kind of set this and forget it. I always recolor these. For these are kind of going to be my standard drops. I'm not going to emphasize them. One thing you can do here is maybe once you've developed sort of a base of these items, meaning I have every slot, I've got a little bit of physical resistance, I've got a little bit of health. You might not want to see just tier 1 affix of all of these items drop over and over again. So what I would actually recommend doing is either changing this to being must contain 2 of these affixes, meaning it'll be health and physical resistance or health and void resistance or void physical, something like that. Or probably what actually makes more sense is to just come down here and do tier of the individual affixes must be at least 2, you could even do 3 or higher. And at the beginning, you can just set this to 1, and then as you progress through the campaign and you want to kind of make this more strict so you're not seeing, tier 1 physical resist drop over and over, it's going to be worse than what you already have. You can increase this to 3 or to 2 and make it more strict, and it'll kind of progress with you as you level. So let's go ahead and add that in, and I'll show you just in case you don't know. Here is what the tier on the affix. If you just hold Alt while mouse overing an item, you can see this is a tier 1 affix. And so that filter will let you say, hey, if this doesn't drop with at least tier 2 on it, or tier 3, or whatever you want to set it to, don't show it. And so in this case, if it was set to tier 2, this wouldn't show. But for now, leave it as tier 1 and it'll show. Once you've filled out a base of your items, you can drop that down to be more strict, tier 2 or tier 3. Next thing, I'm going to add red to this one. This is going to be some affixes that are very rare, but super valuable. It's going to be cleansing on potion use. And you can also add, if we cancel, you can also add some rogue specific ones here if you'd like to. This is completely optional, but something like physical penetration. Let's do here, physical penetration with shadow daggers. If this drops, either one of these during the campaign, it's going to be super strong. So you may want to grab these, but this part's completely optional. You could also target something, for example, if you're going to be playing a Rune Master next and you want to target plus to Frostclaw, you could throw that in here. anything like that. But this is really just to say, highlight this. It's going to be a really strong affix. The cleanse ailment on potion is really good, especially for hardcore when you get into like Acts 4 and 5. It's just going to let you sort of get out of jail free card. But yeah, you can just leave this to as 1. I want these to be emphasized. Next thing we'll add, again, affix. This is going to be something a little more utility based, movement speed, and cooldown recovery. Both of these are pretty universally strong, I would say. Movement speed is very good. I'm going to have these recolored here, confirm, and I want to emphasize those. And so these will be kind of like this, but they'll just be, it'll yell at me a little more when those drop. And the last thing I want to do is a weapon base. So I would recommend when you first start here, just make this, you can do yellow works. When you first start here, I would add affix on it, and I would actually do bleed chance to bleed. I would do chance to ignite, and I would do shred. This would be a really good starter. You can emphasize that as you're going through. Again, same rules apply. If you want to make this more strict later, you can go ahead and set that up. Just start with 1, and you can increase that to be more strict as you go through. But to start, this would be nice for your weapons. It's going to say anything with these affixes on it. Show me that. The other one you might want to add that's really good is crit multi. So I'll throw those on there. And then finally, we're going to do the bases. So first is the affix, then the bases. Here, item type. For the rogue in particular, what we're looking for is, oh, I already typed Chris, that was an accident. We're going to be looking for daggers. I'm actually going to go ahead and set this, boom, for daggers. I'm going to go ahead and set this up now, but you really won't need this until like level 27 or so. This Chris dagger is going to really open up the potential of your rogue. It's going to make you kill everything super fast. So we just want to flag this anytime we're leveling. If one of these drops, we want it to sort of do pink. We want it to sort of yell at us, hey, you got a Chris. Throwing 2 of these on immediately, regardless of what else is going on, whatever affixes you get, is going to be a pretty big power uptick. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, and I'm actually going to copy it and just use this as an example. Let's say you're going to play Shadow Dagger Rogues. So I know that I also want to target one-handed swords. Confirm. I don't want a Gladius, but I want a Katana. This is another really good in-game sword for the Shadow Dagger. It's not going to drop during the campaign, so this is not the best example, but this would also just create another subtype here where it highlights, hey, this is a Katana. I really want that. You could also do something like, if you wanted to do a bow, here in the 2-handed weapons, you could also do bows and then select the type of bow if you're going to play a falconer, something like that. But just an example of how you might want to throw this in for all your other sort of in-game build goals, anything like that. So this loot filter, super simple, takes just a couple minutes to set up, and then this will last you the entire campaign. You don't ever have to touch this again. So when you first start leveling, I would say your first 20 levels, your bars are going to look like this, where you're going to be using puncture primarily, decoy, shift, smoke bomb. You can just throw these on. Acid flask is going to be really good for the first 20 levels. Anytime you get into big AoE, you can just sort of throw an acid flask. Really 2 dots of this. You'll see some of this in my gameplay. 2 dots of this is going to AoE clear pretty much everything if it's like small, low HP mobs. And you can just kind of toss this as you're running through the campaign while using puncture for bigger bosses or bigger rare enemies. Once you make the switch to Umbral Blades around level 20, 22, your playstyle is all about the throwing the Umbral Blades. You can play throw 2 of these before you pull them back. But this stuff doesn't really change. As you're going through, you're shifting, it's going to cause you to move super fast. Let's show an example of how decoy works. This is really just your uh-oh button. You can throw decoy, they'll go attack that instead of you. Give you a few seconds of reprieve if you get in trouble. And then smoke bomb, just for defensibility. You can throw that on the ground. See, drop a smoke bomb at your feet, blinds enemies, grants you haste. It's really not a big deal. I hardly ever use smoke bomb because I'm always on the move, but can be nice if you're fighting a boss or something. So general playstyle, once you get your blades unlocked, you're just throwing these and you're sprinting. That's literally all you're doing. Throw these every now and then behind you, you're sprinting, throw them behind you, you're sprinting, and you can just do this casually throughout the whole campaign, and you never have to slow down. You don't want to be like planting your feet. A, you're going to lose a lot of your defense if you stop moving. And then B, it's just slow, right? Like if you're leveling, you want to get out of the campaign, you want to get into monoliths. So you're just blasting. Shift, throw something into big AoE packs. Shift, throw something into big AoE packs. You can see if it's 3 mobs, I'm not even going to acknowledge it. If it's bigger than 5 or 6 mobs, you start getting some nice AoE. Like this is good here. I'll just throw this. I'll kind of have everything get dragged through it, and this stuff will just sort of die on the way. And you're just doing this through the entire campaign. This is once you unlock your blades, you're just going to run, you're going to throw these, everything's going to die behind you as you go through. And this doesn't, this doesn't change from being level 46 all the way up until early monoliths. It doesn't matter. When it's going to look exactly the same when you're level 22 as it does right now. You're just throwing these blades and running, and that's the entire leveling playstyle. You're going to just zoom through to your objective. That'll get you through all these zones super fast, and that's one of the main reasons why Blade Dancer is so fast. It's got great mobility. You can throw this big AoE behind you, and it'll just kill stuff that runs into it, allowing you to somewhat passively level while you're running through the campaign. So I'm here at the Maxroll website, and I'm in a blank planner. I've got my class set to marksman, but again, it doesn't really matter for this build. I'll have a link to the progression, the skill progression below for softcore and hardcore. I'm going to kind of walk through my general setup here and talk to you about where you might make some trade-offs between the two. But ultimately, these will be really similar. You're just going to make a choice between survivability and damage, depending on which one you're playing. For the start, I would almost always recommend going 4 points in Swift Assassin, 1 point here in Guile, 1 point here in Evasion. Then you can come back and for softcore players, finish off 4 points in Swift Assassin, and then 5 points in Agility. Next, Twin Blade that will allow you to use 2 daggers, and I would actually go 4 points here into Duelist, and now this is going to open up some of your other trees. So even though I've chosen Marksman, I'm going to go to the Blade Dancer tree first, and I'm going to grab these 5 points in Pursuit. This is really, really strong. So I'm going to go ahead and grab 5 points here in Pursuit. And then I'll come back and finish off Duelist. And now from here, you really kind of make a choice. Do you want to get a little more survivability, or do you want to get a little more damage? My recommendation, come here to Falconer, go 5 points in Raptor Wings. It's very good. And then for Blade Dancer, I would go 1 point here just to unlock the ability to move through the tree, and then would max this out. Once here will provide quite a bit of damage increase, and then you could also increase Pursuit. It's very strong. And then what I would recommend doing here probably is you're gonna be getting close to that like early monolith stage at this point. You're only gonna have a few more talent points to spend. I would actually do 8 points in Wilderness Scout. This is going to make you nice and tanky. And then I would do 8 points in Steady Hand, 3 points Dodge and Parry, and max this out for the increased base health. So all this stuff's going to give you nice base health, make you nice and tanky. Your build's going to carry the damage so much you honestly don't need to prioritize the build. That's the general progression I would go through into early monoliths. I'll link the exact progression below for hardcore and softcore if you want to follow those along. And then, if you want to continue to play Blade Dancer, I would recommend just going to the build guides here on Max Roll and picking your in-game Blade Dancer build if you want to keep carrying out the talents. They'll have a little more optimized setup for in-game. For the skills, first thing we're going to do is puncture. And for puncture, we are going to go just like this. And this is going to get us really like into the start of the game. And then I would grab a point in Frenzy here, and I would actually just max this bleed chance. It's really strong. Then I would max this, and then I would max this. And this is, you're not going to get this far when you're going through the actual campaign, but this is the way I would do puncture. Super important for the second skill slot. You're going to unlock Umbral Blades at level 16. And so regardless of kind of what's going on, I would make sure to despecialize. If you're using something else, maybe you're using Shift or Smoke Bomb or something like that, I would despecialize that and throw Umbral Blades in the second you hit level 16. And this is going to let you build up, start building up your skill points while you're leveling. You're still going to be using Puncture as your primary attack until we get the two named daggers, and that'll be right around level 22, call it 20 to 22. But by throwing Umbral Blades on as early as possible, you're going to get to the sort of the golden number, which is 7 skill points in Umbral Blades. And the second you hit that 7 skill set mark, the entire game's going to change for you, and it's like an epiphany in a whole new world. You're going to be zooming through the campaign. You're going to be really fast, but it takes 7, in my opinion, 7 skill points in Umbral Blades to really unlock that. And I'll talk through why that is. First thing we're going to do is sort of work up through this area. So 1 point in downfall, sword thrower. And again, you're not going to use Umbral Blades until you have all of these, but this is really your path. 7 points, you need precision cuts and loathing, in my opinion, for Umbral Blades to not feel pretty terrible. And the reason that is, you sort of take these daggers, you throw them, and they spin on the ground. Without these two nodes, you don't really have a lot of control over where those stop. So precision cuts cause Umbral Blades to stop when they reach the target location, and then loathing sort of makes them track enemies, like a little bit of a homing disc. And these two things together make it feel really, really nice. But before that, it feels super out of control, and it's hard to hit your target. And honestly, you're better off just sticking with your puncture build until you've unlocked all 7 points. But second you hit level 16, throw Umbral Blades on the bar, and as soon as you have 7 skill points available on Umbral Blades, throw them in just like that, and switch Umbral Blades to be your primary attack. So right when that happens, we are going to despecialize puncture. We're going to add shift, and then you're going to be level 20 here. So what I would actually recommend doing for the next 3 of these is just picking a skill you're going to want to play in the endgame. There's nothing you're going to add in here that's going to really drastically change your experience in the campaign. So for me, I know I want to play Detonating Arrow. I'm going to throw that in. I'm going to want these 2 skills. So as I level, when I get to 20, I'll throw Detonating Arrow in. When I get to 35, I'll throw Explosive Trap in. And then when I get to 50, I'll just throw Smoke Bomb in. And I'll remove Umbral Blades when I switch to my real in-game build. That's what I mean when I say the second you get 7 points in Umbral Blades, nothing else in the game matters. You're just going to throw those blades and you're going to kill everything. These 3 slots you can really use to just start leveling up skills relevant to your in-game build, so you have a smoother progression into whatever you want to specialize in. For shift, I will say there's a kind of a recommended path. I would do 2 points here in velocity, 3 points here in momentum, and then I would start tracking up towards this node here, especially if you're playing on hardcore. If you don't get a belt that lets you clear ailments, this node can be really good early monolith. It can be really good in the campaign. And if you do sort of this route, by the time you get to shift here, By the time you get to shift here, that'll be right around the time you need it when stuff starts getting pretty spooky. And I just think it's nice to be able to clear your debuffs. You know, this is optional. You don't have to do this. You could also come down here and go finish this. Couple slots here into invulnerability. And this is a pretty normal like shift path as well. But, you know, kind of rushing up through here will make the axe in the desert area a lot easier. When you're getting those poisons, you're getting those bleeds. You don't have to worry about those. Every time you're shifting, you're going to take that stuff off. So with that being said, let's do a quick recap. Start off with puncture. You're going to be able to throw that on right at level 5. Use a two-hander, either a sword or a bow, for puncture as you're going through the early part of the campaign. The second you hit level 16, we're going to put umbral blades into one of our skill slots, and we're going to start building skill points. The second we hit 7 skill points, we're going to throw these skills into umbral blades, and we're going to start deleting everything. That is also when we're going to switch to daggers, so we want both of those to happen at exactly the same time. And that brings me to my next part of the video, which I'm going to show you how to get these daggers right around the same time when you hit your 7 skill point umbral blades. Okay, I'm back in game here in Last Epoch, and I'm going to show you where to get 2 very, very strong daggers that are really the premise for this whole leveling guide. And as you're working through the campaign here in Chapter 2 and 3, you selected your mastery, you've moved all the way through here. When you get to the courtyard, this map and general campaign maps are always the same. They're not going to change. So now that we're here, this is always going to look like this. So you're just cruising. This is the way you'll go as part of the campaign anyway, so it's not out of the way at all. It's going to be exactly the same path. But what you want to do is right when you get down here, you actually want to go south first. So you go north, you'll fight the keeper here. You want to go south, and what you're looking for is this treasure chest here, Looter's Hall. I would recommend clearing this area out, especially if you're on hardcore, before you try to loot the chest and pick stuff up, because these guys will kill you. They're pretty dangerous mobs. But we're going to loot these, and we're going to see I have a loot filter here that's not going to let them drop. So you're not going to be able to see with the loot filter. If you're using the one for my quest, you're not going to be able to see these. But just hold X. That will disable the loot filter temporarily. And this is what we're looking for. These will always drop from this chest. You don't have to worry about it. 100% drop chance. We're going to pick those up. And these 2 daggers will really sort of open up the build and let you play. It's a guaranteed drop chance, so you don't have to think about these. These are always going to be here. I think I got mine right around level 22, and it should be right around the same time you're unlocking your 7th point here in Umbral Blades to be able to get Loathing and Precision. But once you get those, let's take a look at them. So, Andonai's Poignard, it's going to be a unique, but not in the quality sense. It's more unique in that these daggers are named. They're original daggers. They'll always be here. They'll always be named the same thing. This is not a random drop the way some of these other daggers are. So if we look at the dagger I have equipped, Slayer Chris of Hunger, that's random, right? It's got a random affix. Same for here. It's got a random prefix and suffix. And these daggers here are not like that. They will always drop with the same stats on them, and they're very, very good stats. So increased melee attack speed, a lot of dodge rating, and plus melee damage. These will be very good, and you can actually use these for the rest of the game. You can use these until you get into monoliths, and maybe you want to switch to a bow and play falconer, or whatever you want to do. But these will last you the rest of the game, even if you don't find another drop. The Chris's are substantially better, so going back to my loot filter, I would recommend throwing in something to highlight the Chris. As soon as those start to drop, you just replace these and you'll be zooming. But again, Courtyard, as part of the campaign. Work your way all the way around and come south here, loot these chests. These will be here. In the second you loot these chests and you have 7 points of Umbral Blades, you're cruising for the rest of the campaign. One thing I will highlight is that you don't have to wait on these daggers to switch to Umbral Blades. Once you get 7 points, you can switch this build as long as you have 2 daggers of some sort. So if you get like a sacrificial knife and you get 2 of those to drop, or you have 2 other daggers, it is worth it to switch out of puncture as soon as you can. But these 2 original daggers are going to be better than anything else you've gotten up to that point, especially if you don't have good affixes on them. And then you'll progress from those into the Chris, and that'll take you into endgame. But I just do want to highlight, you don't have to pick these daggers up. If you have 2 daggers, the most important thing this allows you to do is have a 100% foolproof way of getting 2 daggers and getting into the build. But it's not a requirement if you already have the daggers, you just need 7 points in Umbral Blades. Next up, I'm going to cover just a couple sort of what I would call danger zones in the campaign. The first is going to be here. This section again is primarily for folks that are playing hardcore, but I just want to highlight some areas where, hey, you want to be particularly careful because this stuff can get a little spooky. So the first is here in the ruins of Welrun, and you'll actually enter this zone down here in the left, and you're kind of working up and you're working around, and the quest, where you go on to the campaign quest is right here, and it's also got a side quest associated with it that I wouldn't recommend doing. And then finally you'll come back here later for a side quest that'll take you up here to the north part. So when I'm doing this in the campaign, I always like to grab the waypoint. I know I have to come back here later to unlock a passive slot, and this area can be pretty dangerous. So let me just show you the sort of mobs. It's going to be the big void horrors that walk around, slap the ground, and make pools. It's going to be a lot of little guys that die pretty easy. But a lot of these type mobs have pretty big, they do pretty big melee damage. So like these guys can hit pretty hard for melee. These guys can give you some armor shred debuff. And these big void prophets will leave a bunch of stuff on the ground. So the way you die in this area is getting one shot by void on the ground. So you see this guy slaps the ground, void circles everywhere. That can overlap with these void circles, and this can be a pretty dangerous area. My best advice if you're doing this area, don't slow down, don't stop. As soon as you get in here, run straight to the waypoint, and then come back, run straight down to the quest objective here, go on to the next area, and don't ever come back. Especially if you're playing hardcore. Really no reason to be in here. It's just not a good place. The next area I'll discuss is the Shining Cove. So this is where you leave the pirate ship, you get spit out here, you'll have your castaway buddy, and you'll kind of start working through the desert. This is the first time you'll be in the desert for the whole campaign. And these big scorpions will put stuff on the ground. It's no good, does a lot of damage, but it's really these hydras and the little scorpions that are the problem. Let's watch what this big hydra does. Throws up on me. Now that I dodged that because I'm a lot higher level, but see if I can get some debuffs here. There, it throws up again, so you'll get poison debuffs. That's just from the melee attacks. And then he'll actually do a really nasty, there, snake infection. So this is you can see it's killing me at level 50. So that is a really, really nasty debuff. I'm using the cleanse on shift, and that's why I mentioned it. If you can't get the belt with ailment cleanse, you can just cleanse with shift. But this area, you're going to get bleeds, you're going to get poisons, and it's really the first time you're going to get those. So make sure you're paying attention. You're probably not going to have the shift points just yet. And if you get lucky and get the belt, great. But generally speaking, you just want to make sure you're being cognizant of those debuffs. Sort of sandy, temple-y type area. And you're kind of running through here. And the debuffs here are just super nasty. Stuff all over the ground. These scorpions are going to hit you and stack big bleeds. You can see I walk right in and get 5 bleeds. That can definitely kill you at a lower level. Same thing here. These snakes are going to be thrown up on the ground constantly. These guys are going to be giving you bleeds. And then you'll have hydras as well that'll be spitting on you with poison. And and that snake venom. So all this stuff can overlap and it can really hurt. I'm going to show you the map here just so you have it, and maybe that'll help you kind of get through here a little quicker. But the path's always going to be the same. I recommend, again, either working through this nice and slowly so that you're being safe if you're playing on hardcore, or just pedal to the floor. No regrets, don't look back. Run through the whole thing and get up here where you're going. Let's make that go away. Get up here where you're getting on to the next area. I'll just quickly go over sort of where everything finished up for me at the end of the campaign. You can see my gear is really awful. 19 dexed, 774 health, about 30% movement speed. I am capped on physical resistance, which is nice. About 13% armor, and I've just got junky gear in pretty much every slot. So I'll show you guys. Really bad rolls on those movement speed rings. Pretty much everything's as bad as it can get. So as long as if I can kill stuff the way this character is, you guys can definitely kill it. Let's show an example of what a monolith will look like, sort of the second you finish the campaign, as bad as it can get. Just to demonstrate, hey, right when you come out of the campaign with this build, even if you don't have any gear at all, you'll still be able to kind of go in and clear these monoliths. So same idea as the leveling. We're just dropping our blades, running around, really just objective hunting here, like most classes in monoliths. If you see some nice AoE, especially early, feel free to pitch your blades off in the middle of those. It's going to help you. You can see I'm getting experience pretty quickly here. And you just want to keep moving. It's the whole premise of the build. Your defenses are much better while you're moving. I'm not going to stop and loot that chest. I'm going to kill a few things, level up to 47. And we're just kind of cruising through looking for the objective. So I'm playing, this is a hardcore character, so I'm going to play it a little safe. I don't want to get one shot. If I was kind of playing this character seriously, I would probably invest in crafting some defenses and health before I hopped into monoliths. Just spend 5 minutes quickly optimizing the gear you have on, and you'll feel a lot better when you go into this. But for me, here we are. I'm at the objective, which is kill this guy. You can see lots of AoE. And you can see the experience is just crazy, crazy fast. So all I'm doing is walking around in a circle. I'm kiting, killing a few things. Monolith is over. Only took about 90 seconds to do the whole thing. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. What I'll do is leave a link to 2 Twitch VODs down below that really shows my start to finish leveling process on the marksman. If you guys want to watch that back, you can see all the decisions I made. You can see passive skills, gearing, how I approached each section, all of that stuff. Keep in mind, I was still working on my Twitch settings and working on some of my YouTube clips. So you're not going to have access to the audio, but you'll get to see everything from start to finish. Excited to keep making videos around Last Epoch. I'm going to shoot for about 1 video a week, and then when we get into the Path of Exile League, I'll probably up that to 2 videos a week, depending on how busy things are with my day job. Until then, if you guys have any questions or anything you'd like to see in future videos, feel free to leave a comment below and drop the video a like if you found it helpful. Thank you guys very much. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one.